We're not the suits that talk football. We're the dudes that know football. And you've just crossed over into the trend zone. Dave here with Casey. We are the football dudes. Are you ready, brother?
I am. Let's go.
Okay, next stop, the trend zone. It is Monday, April 27th, coming at you from Los Angeles, California. And it is a beautiful but a little chilly 60 degrees out there, a little blustery.
Got you beat, David. 64 up in the Sherm, getting into the 80s this weekend. It's already summer. Can you believe it?
Ooh, yeah, I can. All right, folks. In today's episode, we'll talk about the NFL draft remains king of the offseason. Looking good, Casey.
Feeling good, Dave.
The NFL had tons of teams trading places, and some top players from the drafts past get their fifth-year options picked up today. But Casey, we cannot take a trip into the trend zone without a tasty nug for the people. What you got?
I'm going to need more than just a nug, bro, because Pittsburgh set a record with 320,000 people in attendance for the first night of the draft.
Wow.
I'm smoking Detroit Rock City, who had 275. And overall, Pittsburgh sets another record with 805,000 people over the 3-day extravaganza. That also beat Detroit, which had 775,000 in attendance, Dave. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, this thing keeps getting bigger and bigger, but that's not all. There were a bunch of people watching at their houses.
There were actually over 13 million, down just a little bit from last year, 13.6, but that's because all those other people were in Pittsburgh watching this thing live, still dominating everywhere. Basketball for that round of the playoffs kind of tops out between 4.5 and 5 mil. So the NFL draft, not a game, not anything, a draft doubles, almost triples what the next most popular sport does. Crazy, dude.
Yeah, it is amazing. Every year, the NFL just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and this is the NFL's offseason Super Bowl, and it's just super, super exciting to find out where these guys are going. I think the little dip in the ratings might have had to do with less quarterbacks kind of at the top, less quarterback intrigue in a general sense.
Yeah, and we've known it was going to be Fernando basically since January, so a little of that sparkle was off it, but they still did okay.
All right, Casey, the Trend Zone, available for subscription on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get it going with top trending stories. Continuing on with the theme of the draft, Casey, the new 8-minute limit to the first round picks. React!
It felt a little quick, man. They actually were getting there, and TV kind of had to catch up with what was going on there. Good news. It came in under 3 hours for the first time ever. So that's pretty nice. It felt decent. We didn't feel like when we're watching it was like, oh my God, it's going too fast. But you could tell it was getting a little bit ahead of the broadcast there. But we talked about this being catered for the made for TV moment. And that's exactly what it did. And of course it delivered.
Yeah, they shaved 36 minutes off of last year's time. And I felt the pacing was pretty good. We were wise as to not get tipped off by social media. We kept ourselves away from that so we could experience it sort of in real time for ourselves. Casey, draft used to be 15 minutes for every pick in the first round. Roger Goodell, the first round had lasted 6 hours and 8 minutes in 2007. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, and I think it's better for it. We wondered if that was gonna have an impact on the how teams were able to draft and maneuver around, and the answer to that was it did not.
Yeah, it did not prevent these modern GMs from wheeling and dealing. Casey, the 2026
picks, Dave.
I mean, right? There were a grand total of 41 draft weekend trades, and that is not an aberration. It just seems to be the standard, the modern day GM's MO.
Yeah, it used to be you couldn't get picks away from teams, and now nobody wants to keep them anymore.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like you said, it's these newfangled GMs, and this is how business is done. And, a big part of that was the Cowboys, trading with Philly. We talked about is like once you win in fantasy, once you make that move to draft players from teams you hate within the division, then it's so freeing. And that's what's happening league wide. It's like, okay, we'll trade with Philly, we'll trade with San Francisco, we'll trade with Green Bay. And one thing Jarrett said after that, when they asked him about trading with Philly, he's like, if I didn't trade with teams that I wanted to beat their ass, I would have no teams to trade with. And it's true. It's you got to do what's best for your team, regardless of who you're dealing with. But
a deal's a deal, right?
That's right. And it was crazy, man. The record was in 23 with 43, but a lot of teams had a lot of action in this thing, and that's what makes it so intriguing.
Yeah, so there were a handful of key draft records. You just mentioned the most trades ever was 43 and 23. We're tied for second most here in this year's draft with 41. Other trade records or milestones here as well.
Yeah, in 2024, the Eagles and the Texans both had 8 trades, and I think Cleveland had the most this year. I think it was around 6.
Yeah.
The most time a single pick has been traded 6 times in 2023. That was pick 230. Dave, you remember that pick? It was a good one, right? It went from the Jets to the Bucks to the Texans to the Eagles to the Texans to the Bills. So, it
was like the Village Bicycle, Casey. Yeah. Everyone's had a ride.
That's right. Good stuff.
All right. 8 teams, Casey, traded out of the first round. And then, of course, the Jets had 3 first-round picks, and 6 teams in total had 2 first-round picks. So, man, this is just a crazy draft in a lot of ways.
Yeah, dude. And most of that happened, at least half of it, before the draft even went down. But it's weird to say these words, but it feels like the Jets had a great draft.
Easy now, Casey.
I know that's the way it feels, but it was a trip because the Falcons, Bengals, Broncos, Packers, Colts, Jags, no first-round draft pick going into this. And then the Bills and the Niners, they jumped out of the first round on draft night. So there was a big with the haves and have-not in the first round, man, and it was definitely on display.
Well, half of the picks in the first round were traded. Of the 32, 16 were moved either before or during the draft. So that in and of itself is just craziness.
Yeah, that, like you said, it's the new way that the NFL does business. And back to these Jets, 3 first-round picks in the 2026 draft, and we felt like they hit home runs with each of them. There was a little intrigue if it was going to be Bailey or Ohio State. And as it got closer to draft night, it seemed like Bailey was definitely the call there.
Over Reese.
Yeah, everybody kind of had that dialed in. And then at 16, they went out and got Kenyon Sadiq.
Sweet.
Which, I think is going to be great player in that offense. And then they jump back into the end of the first round and get Omar Cooper out of Indiana, and many had speculated he would go to the Jets at 16. So to be able to come back, get him at 30, get that full-length contract with him, impressive draft by the new Jets brass.
Yeah, no doubt. And they have 3 first-rounders in the 2027 draft, which is a real super talented draft. They're going to roll with Geno this year, but if that doesn't work out, then next year they have the ammo to get their quarterback of the future, and they put a team on the field that quarterback has a chance to succeed in. But let's not count Geno out just yet, man. The guy can still sling it.
Yeah, dude. And I think last year was kind of an aberration. I don't know that anybody could have worked that Raiders squad as bad as they were, especially up front.
Yeah.
And, trading away Jacoby Myers, Bowers being hurt most of the year, and they were unable to block for Ashton Genty. So it was tough sledding.
But other than that, though, pretty good squad.
Yeah, let's go ahead and keep it in the AFC West, Dave. I know you were stoked about the draft that the Chiefs put together.
Yeah, they did a good job. Their secondary was decimated in the offseason. They traded, obviously, their top corner there and to the Rams. But they get a replacement for him with the number 6 pick. They trade up to get Mansour Delane from LSU. And then later on took defensive tackle out of Clemson, Peter Woods. So arguably a real nice set of players there. Our Mason Thomas also added to the squad there. So pretty impressive pull for the Chiefs.
Yeah, dude. And you mentioned Duffy going to the Rams in this offseason. The Chiefs haven't been up this high in the draft in quite some time. I think the last time they were up here, they went ahead and got Mahomes. So to hit area of need, and it wasn't super punitive to make those moves with the Browns to get up there. Still had, the late first rounder. They were able to hold on to that. And then coming back with R. Mason, that I love that player too. So
yeah,
Chiefs definitely cornerback, defensive tackle, edge. They hit major areas of need high up in the draft. So so far on paper, it looks like a win for the Chefs.
It sure does, unfortunately. Moving along to the Cleveland Browns, Casey. They had a lot of picks in this year's draft and a couple of high ones here. They cashed into some decent players.
Yeah, man. Spencer Fano. A lot of people like this guy quite a bit. And a person you heard a lot leading up to the draft from Texas A&M, Casey Concepcion. He was one of these guys that people are really starting to like.
Yeah.
He's got that top end speed, man. You get this guy in space, he is gone. They also added Denzel Boston from Washington. I know that's a guy that you liked a lot. So,
big dude.
And then coming back and getting the Toledo safety, Emmanuel McNeil Warren. These all look like home runs for the Browns, man. I can't believe I'm putting those together too. But it looks like as bad as they've been in years past, it feels like this was a huge draft to get them back in place.
Yeah, and they got a crap load of quarterbacks in there. Let's see how that all shakes out in the big picture. Okay, Casey, your Dallas Cowboys, arguably one of the teams that did the best job in this year's draft.
We were sitting there as it kept getting closer, and David was around pick 6. I was like, there's no way Caleb Downs is going to fall to us. There's no way Caleb Downs falls to us. And then at 10, the Giants went O-lineman, and then I saw the little trade when we moved from 12 to 11. I was like, oh, my God, and jumped up just to secure the pick, make sure he got him.
And you got squeezed, Casey.
Yeah, well worth it, dude. Oh, my God, I'm so stoked. This hits a huge area of need there was plenty on the defense, but everything you've heard, there's not one person that's had anything bad to say about Downs.
Yeah.
This guy started as a true freshman at Alabama.
That just doesn't happen, right?
No, and then goes to Ohio State and is one of the best players on the team that's chock full of all these guys that went in the first round of this draft. So he's going to come.
It wasn't just him, was it?
No, it wasn't. And then this is my favorite part, dude. I talked about it earlier. Sitting at 20, sizzled the Steelers a little bit. I'm still bitter about those Super Bowls in the 70s, okay? But regardless, we Scrooge them, let Philly jump them, squeeze Philly for a couple of fourth rounders, fall back to 23, and still get our guy Malachi Lawrence, get a Lawrence back on that front line for the Cowboys. Two huge areas of need. Lawrence was a guy that the Cowboys liked a whole bunch, and that was kind of getting out closer to draft time too. So got to move up, get Caleb Downs, and hold on to the pick in the first round and parlay that into 2 fourth rounders. So when all is said and done, man, they had, I think, one of the best drafts. And as much as everybody's been shitting on Jera for trading Micah last year, you got to say that this looks like they made a pretty good deal and the way they've gathered all this talent because of that trade.
No doubt. You look at the Kenny Clark, you look at the Gary signing, the Quinn inside. I mean, wow, this Dallas defense is not going to be anywhere near the Dallas defense last year that was shredded on a regular basis.
Yeah, and, plucking Christian Watson, a rising star, or Christian Parker, I was thinking, out of Philadelphia, so you damage a team in your division and you get one of these great defensive minds who's been around some top-end cornerbacks, P2 in Denver, and, of course, you've seen how he's worked with DeJean and company in Philly. They expect him to have a similar impact. Caleb Downs in Dallas, a young Savon Revel there too. So I'm excited about this defense going into the year.
All right, moving it on. The Miami Dolphins sort of had a little fire sale, moving expensive talent. They ate the contract of the quarterback Tua, and they also had obviously multiple first round picks here, and they also seemingly put together a halfway decent draft for the new regime there.
Yeah, and they could have gone in a number of places in this
Many.
draft too, because they need something everywhere. They
Right.
get the big tackle, Caden Proctor, early on, but a guy that you liked a lot, and another guy that was kind of getting talked about in draft circles moving up to this thing was San Diego State corner Chris Johnson, man, who was really rising up everybody's boards. But Dave, in the second round, coming back, getting Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech.
We were talking about him.
Yeah, I liked a lot too. So
Tackling
Dolphins
machine.
seemingly put together a pretty good draft here.
Yeah, Chris Bell, the wide receiver too. All said and done, they really did restock the cupboards there quite a bit, and they are dealing with the largest dead cap number in NFL history heading into this season. So they needed an influx of young talent there.
That's
Casey, this brings us to the shock of the first round. I don't know what to how do I Rams select quarterback Ty Simpson.
Yeah, I think this kind of blew everybody's minds when it happened. I don't think anybody predicted this. If you look back, there were some breadcrumbs if you took a deep dive into it. But if you would ask anybody, are the Rams going to draft Ty Simpson at 13? Everybody would say, hell no. But when you look at it, they don't plan to be drafting this high very often, and they haven't. And Matt Stafford, for sure, Hall of Famer, but going into last season, he had the back issues going into camp, and it's his gig
to be
for
the offensive MVP, though. A team that was this close to the Super Bowl, you'd think just one little more push, maybe one more offensive weapon, one more supreme defensive stud that could be a game finisher.
Well, they went and got him.
Simpson.
They got McDuffie with their pick there. So they got one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And that's where the problems with this Rams team was. It definitely was not on offense. It was that sieve of a defense.
Well, it wasn't the front of the defense either.
No, the back end.
There was a very talented front four.
They went and plucked a bunch of cats off of the Kansas City Chiefs. So they addressed their biggest area of concern. Sure, you would like to get a guy that's going to contribute right away, but not knowing what's happening with Stafford moving forward, they kind of secured their spot just in case. So
it looked like Garoppolo was mulling retirement.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted him back. They were hoping to lure Cousins in. Didn't get him to sign. So
Stetson Bennett's not really been able to, be consistent or do much. So when you look at that, it's a good pick with all the talent surrounding Ty Simpson. But it comes back to that deal where how many starts do you have in college? This cat's got 15 starts, hasn't played a lot at that level, had some great coaching, but not a lot of experience. So you don't want him to have to come in right away. If this dude could sit for 2, maybe 3 years, that'd be the dream scenario for the Rams.
Yeah, they'll be sitting on him for a couple of seasons if things go according to plan. There's no question about that, Casey. But the team that we expected to draft Ty Simpson, maybe jumping back into the back half of the first round or something, got burned. But that was the Cardinals. But they ended up getting a consolation prize.
Yeah, they went out and got Carson Beck, who had his team in the championship and was playing some of his best football late in the season. Kind of elevated that offense. I think he was I know they have playmakers and stuff like that, but I think he was elevating that team through that playoff run that the Hurricanes went on. So this is a cat. You look at Simpson's got 15 starts. Carson Beck's got over 60 starts in college. So that's a wide open competition there in Arizona. You got a disgruntled Brissett there. So
he wants more money.
Yeah, and then you have Gardner Minshew, which has got a sweet mustache, but that's about it. So Beck's got a real opportunity here, and at least it's exciting. It's new blood. Obviously, Jeremiah Love with the 3rd overall pick.
Wow, that part.
And there's weapons at receiver and at tight end. So it's a good situation for a cat that's as polished as Carson Beck is.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was on Georgia before that, and he played well with
them. He's played in some big-time games, dude.
Big time, against big-time opponents. So you got to give him credit for that. All right, Casey, let's look at this. This is the story of the sort of the haves in college, but versus the have-nots. Draft picks by school in the 2026 NFL draft, and we see it's not a surprise the teams at the top of the list and the number of players that were drafted out of those programs.
Yeah, Ohio State leads the way with 11 players drafted, follow up with 10 from Bama and Texas A&M. Clemson, Miami, and Tech all have 9 players. Tech having 9 players is kind of bonkers if you look at their history.
Yeah,
Georgia, Indiana, Penn State with 8, and then Iowa, LSU, Oregon, Washington, Florida, and my Oklahoma Sooners all with 7. That's one more than Texas, 2 S's had. Notre Dame, Missouri, Michigan with 6, and then Auburn and Tennessee both with 5. So if you look at this, the majority of these teams are coming out of just a couple of conferences. You got some ACC teams in here, but it's a lot of Big Ten and it's a lot of SEC.
On a note for Notre Dame, and I'm not sure, we didn't do the research on this, but 2 running backs only selected in the first round, and they were both from the same squad at Notre Dame with Love and Jadarian Price. I don't know if that's ever happened. The only 2 running backs drafted in the first round of the NFL come from one squad.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And you watched all those Notre Dame games, so you've been chirping about how good Price was this whole time.
Yep,
And
he's a great pickup for the Seahawks.
Yeah, and if he doesn't get hurt, we might not hear this Jeremiah Love story. I don't know that Price ever gives up that starting if he was healthy that full time. So I do think the Seahawks got a good one there, and he's got a great opportunity with Kenneth Walker III being on the Chiefs now, and Charbonnet still coming back from injury. So
gonna be wide open
situation, wide open.
All right, Casey. So one of the Heisman finalists there found his way not to being drafted, unbelievably, but he's landed on a squad.
Yeah, he originally said F all them voters, but
right.
I don't know. That's the best way you want to attack stuff. But Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia was not drafted, does not have ideal size, a fun player. I'm not sure that it's going to translate to the NFL. I hope it does, but he's a first Heisman Trophy finalist to go undrafted since 2014. So not all is lost, Dave. He is going to have a chance to compete in camp for the Ravens. So a similar style, obviously not as dynamic a runner as Lamar Jackson, but very athletic and a dual threat. So small though, Dave. He's 5'10", wearing lifts. So he's going to have it all stacked against him. And if he doesn't make it with the Ravens camp, dude, there's this other league called the UFL that I would love to see Pavia in, dude. So, but we'll see what he does when he gets to camp, man. He's going to get an opportunity. Will he be able to cash it in? We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, he'll be behind, obviously, Lamar, and then Tyler Huntley there, who's a very, you're confident in him being able to get in the game and actually play. So he's the solid number 2. So this would be an opportunity for the 3rd pick. Casey, moving on to Mr. Irrelevant. The Broncos had the final 2 picks in this draft, so they had the opportunity to pick who was Mr. Irrelevant and who was the almost Mr. Irrelevant as well.
Yeah, it was between Dalen Bentley, the tight end out of Utah, and Red Murdoch. Is that a football name or what, Dave? Out of Buffalo, the linebacker. So I don't know what the Broncos did if they flipped a coin. This is kind of the only time you want to come in last when you're competing, because all the hoopla that comes around being Mr. Irrelevant, you get to do a ton of stuff. You go to Disneyland, you get a trophy, you get celebrated. There's a bar crawl in SoCal, so a parade, all this good stuff. So it looks like the Broncos are going to split the honor between them two, since it was both of them, which is pretty cool. But you look at some of the production that Red Murdoch had, dude, and it's kind of crazy that he was that far down this list.
Yeah, I mean, they say here it's 17 career forced fumbles. That is a record, which takes that record away from Khalil Mack, who had 16. Khalil Mack has had himself a pretty productive Hall of Fame, if I dare
Yeah,
say, career. And then speaking of Mr. Irrelevant, there's a lot of upside here for Red Murdoch. I mean, obviously, ask the 49ers how irrelevant Brock
that's right.
Purdy is from a handful of years ago to being one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL and a starter on the 49ers team that's got a chance to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, dude, and, like, there's so much talent now that's getting dispersed in the college ranks,
It's
and some
right.
of these cats are staying longer and developing more that you really could have another round to this draft, no problem, and to the delight of all the teams. I mean, everybody's inviting, like, 10 to 15, undrafted free
Undrafted.
agents into
Yeah.
camp anyway, so, you mentioned Brock Purdy, dude. I don't think, it's changed the way that position's looked at forever.
No question. All right, Casey, a little business to take care of here. Starting with some of these fifth year options being picked up, and the Bucks get their guy under contract.
Yeah, it seems like it was just the other day that these cats were in the draft, and now they are getting that fifth-year option. Defensive tackle Kalijah Cansey. The Bucks locked him up. They like what they've seen and what's not to like. He's now guaranteed over $15 million for 2027. I would expect that the Bucks try to lock this guy up long term sometime, either before or during the season. He's been a tremendous player when he's been on the field for these guys.
No doubt. The Eagles also locked down two of their guys.
Yeah, both Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. Carter, 27 million for 27, not too bad. Smith,
Ooh,
chump change, Dave, only 13.7 million for 2027. I would
exactly.
expect both of these guys to get locked up long term. Carter fell in the draft, had that unfortunate situation coming
Yeah.
out that made him drop. He might have been a top 2 pick. But he's made the Pro Bowl in the last couple of seasons, 108 tackles, 13 and a half sacks, 37 hits, 13 passes defended, and 4 forced fumbles. And Smith, he was the 30th pick in 2023, 91 tackles, 10 and a half sacks, 25 QB hits, 2 PDFs, and 2 forced fumbles. So lots of production, lots of change in that Philadelphia defense too. So lots of change in that division. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But all those cats are going to go out and buy some nice stuff.
Yeah, it's nice when you're the team and you go ahead and say, let's get this guy, even though these are big numbers
Mm-hmm.
for these players. It's worth it, and it's nice when you've drafted a guy, hanging on to him, and you're already committed to him for the
Yeah.
27 season at a nice big number. That enables you to have that time to go ahead and figure out the long-term contract, if there's going to be one. Hopefully, for these guys, there will be. And yeah, I mean, it's just that's good drafting. No question.
Howie's always cooking, dude.
Yep.
Always.
Yep, and they know the compensatory system very well too. So when they lose these guys and they go to other places, those comp picks come back in spades.
Yep.
All right, that is going to do it. So many ways to check out the Football Dudes. Trend Zone now available for subscription: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Yeah, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like us on Instagram and Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Football Dudes LA, and make sure you tag us across all social media platforms.
Or just go to footballdudes.com. It's all there for you. That is going to do it for this episode of the Trend Zone. We're not the suits that talk football. We're the dudes that know football. For Casey, I'm Dave. We are out of here.